The most dangerous malware botnet in the world might just be making a comeback. After being taken down in a joint international law enforcement effort in January 2021, this threat group appears to be testing out new tools, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, to be able to see what will work now as opposed to before. And of course, the worry is that it could scale these TTPs up into larger campaigns. Of course, we're talking about Emotet. Emotet became famous a number of years ago with very large-scale malware campaigns, primarily via phishing, and it was able to build a huge botnet that it was able to sell as a service. And we're going to talk about what that specifically is here in just a moment. But a recent article by Proofpoint shows that there might be a smaller scale campaign going on right now testing out new TTPs by Emotet to be able to test out different things that it hadn't been able to do before, or it had not chosen to do before. Prior to their takedown, Emotet was known to basically exploit macros in Microsoft Office documentation. So they would basically phish you in a general kind of looking phishing email and try to prompt you to download a Microsoft document. As soon as you open that document, they would prompt you to enable the macros, and then that would run their malware. Their malware is actually pretty sick, and here's a few reasons why. First off, of course, it connects the target to a command and control server, or C2 server, and that can be anywhere on the internet. From there, it can receive updates to the malware itself, and it can receive additional commands. You can think of this malware more as a Trojan backdoor than something that just spreads on its own and executes and doesn't really require any input from the attacker. This malware infected so many machines and created such a large botnet that Emotet was able to basically use that as a business model. It was called malware as a service, or botnet as a service. And that botnet could be purchased by different kinds of malicious actors online and leveraged for everything from distributed denial of service attacks to other sorts of cyber attack campaigns, to the deployment of ransomware to gain a quick money, the deployment of crypto malware to mine crypto on a distributed network, as well as all kinds of other activities. And this is really one of the more revolutionary things about Emotet and the malware itself, and that is the botnet as a service model. Think about how labor intensive it is to individually hack a computer. Some of you watching me have some experience or knowledge of capture the flag events, where basically you're hacking into a machine. Try doing that thousands of times as fast as possible. It's simply untenable. So doing this in a mass mailing campaign, basically a phishing campaign, and having the users themselves install the malware for you, that's a much more efficient way to scale up the botnet. So that's what Emotet did. They were able to basically have this massive phishing campaign, build this botnet up, and deploy this malware all over the world. And they were able to sell that as a service again to different malicious actors online. Some of the things that those malicious actors might do with the botnet may not seem that bad, like a distributed denial of service attack. It's not actual hacking, you're really just disrupting a service, but you're not gaining any kind of extra access to a system. And then crypto mining, it might not seem that bad because it's really just mining crypto on your machine. You might have a reduction in the CPU that you're able to utilize on your machine. You might have a little bit of an extra electricity cost, but all told, it seems kind of tame compared to, let's say, ransomware. But that's the thing, is the attacker could also just deploy ransomware, or they could do other things with your machine, like snoop around in other services that you have, including turning on the webcam or the microphone if they so wished. And yeah, that it's creepy, but it definitely happened. One of the craziest things about this malware is that it is polymorphic. And basically what that is like, think of the source code that underlies in the malware itself. Like, you might think that malware looks like, you know, a pretty narrow set of source code, and that defines a particular strain of malware. But the thing about Emotet is that it can change host to host to host. So whenever you think about like antivirus or other sorts of security detections in a large environment, what they're often looking for is a unique string or characteristic or portion of code that's known to exist in a specific strain of malware. And if it catches it on a machine, then that's basically an indicator that malware is present on that machine. The issue with polymorphic malware, though, is that, of course, it's changing computer to computer and it's refactoring every single time. So that really negates a lot of the detection capability that AV has. It's not necessarily going to succeed looking for signature-based detections. It's going to have to really rely on behavioral-based detection, i.e. whenever a computer has Emotet and it's, you know, reaching out to a C2 server somewhere somewhere online, that might be an indicator of compromise that the AV detection or other security solutions might be able to narrow in on. But that leads us to a second problem, and that is that Emotet is known to balance between different C2 servers, and sometimes attackers are even able to basically stand up a C2 or a malware distributor in a legitimate domain that they've been able to compromise in the past and have not yet been detected on. So what may look like a legitimate connection online may in fact be a malicious connection, because the domain that is being reached out to online has previously been compromised and is hosting malware. That's basically one way that attackers can disguise command and control servers. So we know now that Emotet is pretty dangerous. It seems to be coming back out, but what specifically is it that they're changing right now in their TTPs that we need to be worried about? Well, like I said, prior to their takedown last January, Emotet was known to really rely on the macros in Microsoft Office documentation. Basically, if you enabled macros, it would automatically download and execute the malware, and then you're toast. And they would distribute this malware through a massive phishing campaign. And those phishing campaigns would often basically zero in on financials and basically have things like salary and W-2 and tax information somewhere in the subject or the body or the attachment name. And that would basically try to get the user to think, okay, that this is clearly important, I need to check in on this, and now they got malware. According to Proofpoint, what they're seeing right now is really a small sample size of testing that's being done right now. They believe it's being done by an actual human right now and not an automated test. But in the subject line, they see simply salary, just a one-word subject header there. In the body of the email, the user will be prompted to click on a OneDrive link. Again, this is different from their previous techniques where they would include the attachment itself. Now the user has to go out to a OneDrive link and download the attachment from there. But it's not just that. The attachment appears to be a slightly different kind of document as well. Once they get to that OneDrive link, they download a zip file called salary_new.zip. Once the user unzips that file, they will be given an XLL document. The typical naming convention for this document appears to be some variation of salary_and_bonuses dash, and then whatever the date it is that either this document was created or distributed, or the date may vary. .xll. So anyway, I say all that so that way you can get your regex ready to get these detections going. Once that XLL document is executed, it downloads the malware, and then you're off to the races. At the end of this documentation, and this, by the way, this research is linked down in the video description, so check it out if you're interested, but at the bottom are some hash values that may be of interest to you for, some pretty low level detection capability. Obviously, we've already talked about how the malware is different, case by case, so that those hash values may not necessarily be very effective in actually catching any malware, but who knows? I mean, if you get a hit, you get a hit, and that's a win. Now, this change in TTPs by Emotet could be due to a number of reasons. It could be due to the fact that last year, Microsoft announced that it will be blocking macros from the internet. So that is a huge reason actually why Emotet would probably want to switch from relying on macros to be able to distribute its malware. But also the change in the extension, the file extension of the actual container of this malware in the document, that might be another way to evade existing detections right now. Obviously, not everybody will have the existing detections for the previous campaigns, but a lot of people will. And so Emotet is likely trying to experiment with different ways to evade those detections with small little tweaks to their workflow. So that is what we know about this malware, but how exactly can you, specifically you, protect yourself? Regardless of if you're in a security team or if you're just watching this as, somebody that's not in cybersecurity, how can you stop Emotet from hitting your machine? Well, remember, we talked about how it spreads primarily through phishing campaigns, and that's where you can watch this video about not getting phished. So definitely check that out. Hopefully it's very helpful for you. And if this video was helpful for you, definitely hit that like button. With all that, I will see you all next time. Bye.